Welcome to the Deep Dive,
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
All right, RJ, now that we're done with our pregame talk about the Peoria Rivermen, because that's how we get fired up for these podcasts, we can start the deep dive officially. First one of October. First one since the preseason has started, and that is right, everybody. The Seattle Kraken are 4-0 to start this preseason with 3 shutouts. Absolutely incredible. It has been so much fun to watch this team come together, watch the new arrivals, watch the vets, watch Matty take another step forward. So far, this preseason has just been nothing but electric, RJ.
Absolutely. And it's been so fun to cover, especially here with the 3 shutouts coming at Climate Pledge Arena. The Kraken have yet to give up a preseason goal at Climate Pledge Arena, and that's going to stand into next year, which is really cool. But yeah, just seeing the progress that everyone's making, seeing the roster really start to take shape. It's been an exciting preseason.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that, a lot of time talking about everybody through training camp, what the final roster cuts are going to be for the Kraken, talk about the Firebirds now that that roster is starting to get filled up, and then, of course, the mascot, going to save the best for last and talk about the mascot at the end of this podcast. First, though, got to do some housekeeping, and that is, of course, letting everyone know that the Emerald City Hockey Patreon is back, up and running. You can go join it now. Help us, help to keep you in the Kraken news and coverage lifestyle that you've all become accustomed to, right? And so you can go check out the Patreon, link in the YouTube description below. We've got it all over all of our socials, everything, just come find us somewhere and you'll get the link to it. We added a ton of new options to it this year. Including things like monthly prospect chats with me, the great practice recap videos that RJ's been doing. Those are going to be on there. We've got, the live game streams. There's so much of it, RJ. We got the regular podcast every week. You want to start throwing some things in?
Yeah, we've got early access to your former Scouts Take videos.
Yeah.
Those will start a little bit later. We basically completely revamped the Patreon. We've got 3 new tier levels, 3 new tier names too, with some cool names to them as well. We've got the Beachgoer tier, we've got the Seafarer tier, and then we've got Terror of the Deep tier. So yeah, we've completely revamped the Patreon, more than double the perks from last year. Absolutely go check it out, see everything that we're offering. It is kind of the ultimate Kraken fan experience, everything you could want as far as coverage. We've got you there.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a really, really fun time. Can't wait to get at it this season, right? Like 4 preseason games is enough, right? Do we need 6? Like, I just want to get to the regular season, RJ.
I know we really don't need that many preseason games, but hey, I mean, when you're 4-0, it's easy to just like, let's quit while we're ahead. Let's get to the winning in the regular season.
We don't need to do this, right? So go check out the Patreon, everybody. Really appreciate that. Really, really looking forward to all the stuff that we can deliver via that this year, and all the awesome. So much of it's built around the community. So just looking forward to doing all that stuff again. We always had so much fun doing those live broadcasts and stuff. Can't wait to get back to those and then do some of the other stuff that we're planning. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. All right. Do you want to go game by game? Should we just kind of start breaking down the roster? Like, how do you want to do this? There's so many ways of tackling what the Kraken have done so far in this preseason, RJ.
Right. I think we should do just a quick little game by game and then get to some of our bigger takeaways from all 4 games, because it does all kind of blend together a little bit as far as what you can take away from this, especially since it's a lot of the same thing.
Yes. Now, me, of course, being stuck down here in Southern California, I wasn't able to get all of the games. Got that first game against Edmonton. And, I mean, really the highlight, well, there's 2 highlights from that, right? And that's the Matty Beniers goal, in which Matty Beniers, 1000% back, just over the shoulder, fantastic, collect the puck, tough angle, get it up and over the shoulder where there's, maybe 2 pucks worth of space to score in. Matty Beniers, totally fine. I'm not even sure we need to talk about him. And then that was the Joey assist to Donato game. That was
what a
beautiful.
play.
so beautiful to watch that.
Yeah, Joey Decord finds Ryan Donato with that stretch pass there. Donato kind of bobbles the puck a little bit, and I think it was enough to get the Oilers goalie to commit, and then he puts it right into the empty net on the wraparound. Still a really tough, skilled move to make too. Getting that into the net too. He made it look easy, but it is not. And I like Donato's answer too about how he saw the whole play develop. He said, I played against Joey in high school, so I know he can do that kind of thing where he'll send those stretch passes out. So I was looking for it right away. And it's great when you've got that chemistry between two players, almost the whole rink away, and it comes together beautifully like that.
Yeah, no, him talking about as soon as he saw Joey's head go up, he knew what was going on, and he was like, "Oh man, I gotta get going." Absolutely fantastic. Gotta love stuff like that. Like that is just awesome stuff. So the Kraken win that Edmonton game 3-0 at home. Kick off the preseason right. I think that was Tanev's first game back too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. And then the next night got the Calgary game, and this was one of the two, unfortunately, I wasn't able to watch, so I'll let you kind of take over for that one.
Right. So in the Calgary game, how it worked also was the Kraken basically split their whole training camp roster into two. So you had half the roster going against Edmonton, and then basically the other half, going the next night against Calgary. I don't think there was any overlap, but it was another 3-0 shutout. You had a goal from Daniel Sprong, who again looked awesome in that game, and then for the second game in a row, a shorthanded goal, great play from Jaden Schwartz and Jared McCann on the 2-on-1 shorthanded. It was a tap in for Schwartz at that point. So the penalty kill looking dangerous, and that's one of the themes that we're going to get to with these preseason games. And then, of course, another shutout. So you have all four Kraken goalies with basically half a game of shutout hockey. And this Flames game, of course, was the first preseason game for Shane Wright. And so you get, him and Jagger Furcus, some of these younger players also getting some game action there. So that was an interesting game to watch. After the game, I know Dave Haxtell really praised Daniel Sprong. This was one of those games that, Sprong doesn't have a contract yet. He's auditioning for a spot, as we'll talk about later. And Haxtell gave him a glowing review. He said he played his ass off, and he sure did. Yeah, he really did. And he scored a goal. And I liked Haxtell's answer too about Sprong. And he scores another goal. He's like, look, I know he can score in this league. I think that's something we all know, right? And he said, I don't want to diminish that. It's very hard to do, but I know he can score in this league. What I want to see from him is that 200-foot game, that complete game. And he mentioned he brought it. So that he made a good case for himself in that one.
Yeah, no, I think, we're going to talk about it when it comes to like final cuts and stuff here for the Kraken, but Sprong is certainly making an interesting case for himself as we go through, talking about, we know he can score. It's the other aspects, right, that have always kind of been the question there for him. All right, so the Kraken finish up that game against Calgary 3-0, like you said, roll into their first away game of the preseason up in Vancouver, and this one not quite so easy for the Kraken, ends up going to overtime, but Kraken are able to pull it out.
Yes, they were, and this one was kind of a reversal of the first two games roster-wise, because this is something that'll happen a lot early in the preseason, where a home team will dress a lot of their better players, the road team will send, maybe more of their roster bubble guys at best, kind of a team of scrubs almost. And generally the home team will win because there's just such an experience imbalance there. And when you watch those first two games for Seattle against Edmonton, against Calgary, there's kind of that caveat there, right? The Kraken had a lot of NHLers in the lineup. Flames and Oilers, almost none. No McDavid, no Draisaitl, no Huberdeau, no Kadri, nothing like that. But a little bit reversed in this one. A lot of the Kraken stars did not make the trip up to Vancouver. It was a lot of roster bubble guys. And you had some good players in the lineup for Vancouver. You had JT Miller. You had Elias Pettersson. I believe you had Bo Horvat. You had a pretty good Vancouver lineup. Thatcher Demko getting the start for them. And you could see it early. because the Kraken fell behind 3-1 in the first period, but they clawed their way back. It was a really gutsy effort. The Canucks were kind of all over them to start, but they found their legs and got some contributions from guys you might not expect, like John Hayden.
Yeah.
That's one we're going to talk about, and especially because he's still, on the active roster. We'll talk about him as it comes to maybe the final cuts that are made. But 2 fights, so really setting the tone there, and then scores the tying goal.
Yeah. No, it was a total gutsy performance, like you said, from the whole team. I think Hayden kind of really, captured all of that and that momentum and energy that the Kraken were feeling, and really kind of powered them to that overtime. You know what I mean? And helped get them there. And it was a really impressive performance. And then you've got Ryan Donato with the second goal of the preseason to finish it off in overtime to keep the perfect preseason alive.
Yeah, that was a nice goal too. He just feels automatic when he's on a breakaway like that, right?
He really does.
You get that feeling, he's going to score.
Right, and it's kind of crazy because it's not like he's, got like a million tricks up his sleeve, right? He's not like Datsuk or something coming down the ice at you where you're just like, what is going to happen here? But he's just got that way of finding the empty spot, right? And at the end of the day, That's all you got to do.
Yeah, a lot of time it's just one solid deke to get the goalie out of position and pick his spot and beat the goalie.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be hard. And then final preseason game, or at least the last preseason game that they have played so far. There's another one tonight, and then on Friday against the Canucks again. This time in Climate Pledge Arena, and another shutout for the Kraken. This time 4-0 win for the Kraken. This one just Thatcher Demko kind of doing his thing right at the beginning, keeping the Canucks in it, even though the Kraken were really all over them, right? A couple power plays, not quite able to get through on those power plays, really dominated play. I forget exactly what the shots on goal total was, but it was like 14-3 at the end of the first period.
It was 14-3.
Yeah, for the Kraken. And for a moment, I was kind of thinking, right, like, oh man, here we go again. Like, this is really looking like Kraken hockey. They're dominating, can't quite get it done. A couple power plays, not doing it. But then in the second period, Matty Beniers, who else, right? But Matty Beniers is able to break through, get a goal on Demko, kind of help keep the momentum going and keep it all positive and like, hey, yeah, you know what, we can do this. And then come the third period, things just started opening up for the Kraken. You get Wenberg in there right at the beginning of the period, get a goal. You get Yanni Gord coming in, scoring a sweet goal over Demko's shoulder, and then of course Yanni Gord with the empty net towards the end there. But this one felt the most like, it was the closest to I would say the final roster as we're probably going to see from the Kraken up until these next couple games, where you had Shane Wright in there with Matty, you had Gord in there with Wenberg, you know what I mean? Like, you had everybody kind of in there together. You had Dunn and Schultz together on the back end running the 2 power plays and stuff. And so, because they were split up for those first 2 games on those 2 different squads that the Kraken had going on. So this one felt like the most, this is the Kraken we're going to see. And if that's the case, this Kraken team looks good.
It does. And the D pairs, I think, were pretty close to what we're going to see in the regular season. That was, just about it. And as far as the forwards, really, it was just Jaden Schwartz and Jordan Eberle were the 2 real mainstays that were not in the lineup. But yeah, I mean, and I think it's worth noting too, the Canucks, again, had some good players in the lineup. They didn't just send, kind of the skeleton crew to go make the trip. JT Miller was in the lineup. Bo Horvat was in the lineup. You had Ekman Larson, Myers, Luke Shen, a lot of their regular defensemen too, and Thatcher Demko starting, again. So and playing the whole game. So it's not an easy game for the Kraken to do that, and it makes it more impressive of a showing.
Right, and we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Grubauer starting and playing that whole game either, and collecting the shutout.
That's right.
I think that was
he went the distance. He's got what, I think about 90 minutes now of shutout hockey.
Yeah,
In the
no,
preseason.
he looks really really sharp. We'll again we'll talk about it more when we get into the roster stuff here in just a second. But Grubauer looks really sharp in a way that he never quite was able to look last season. Maybe not be this comfortable last season. So really excited about that. Anything else you want to talk about this game, or should we go ahead and dive into the roster stuff?
One thing I want to touch on actually from the game in Vancouver that I forgot to mention, because there were a couple injuries the Kraken dealt with there as well. Michael Kempney took a hit along along the end boards, and he's been kind of working his way back from that. And then Jonas Donskoy had kind of an awkward collision as well. Neither returned for that final game against Vancouver at home. So those are a couple situations to monitor. We'll get into that as we talk about the roster, but worth mentioning with that previous game.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so let's kind of start looking here at the roster, and this can kind of also be where you could talk about training camp and the things kind of going on there as we start going through it. I guess let's go ahead and talk about Shane Wright, just because I know obviously lots of discourse through all these preseason games trending after that first performance of his and everything. I just think it's probably best if we get that stuff out of the way. I personally feel like Shane Wright looks like he's going to hang around. I think he's going to make the final roster. I think he's going to play past the 9-game sample unless things really, fall apart for him. But I don't see that happening. I think Shane Wright has looked fairly comfortable playing in these NHL games, taking face-offs, doing all that stuff. He's seemed a lot like Shane Wright that last season in the OHL. He's focused on defense. He's focused on making sure his positioning is good. He's focused on being solid. And then, the offense, it'll come at some point, right?
Yeah, I think my number one takeaway is just he looks like he belongs.
Yeah.
He's not lighting the world on fire. He's not really struggling mightily, as you might expect a younger player to. He just looks like he belongs and he's fitting in. And I think that's an encouraging sign, because it could be very tough making this jump. I think it's almost certain that I would be very surprised if he doesn't make the initial roster to start the season. After those 9 games, I think they'll make another call. But at this point, I do think now it's more likely than not he plays beyond those 9 games. I think the team has tried to set him up to succeed, and you look at the players that he's playing with, and that'll tell you that they have plans for him, throughout the season, playing him with a Jaden Schwartz, with a Jared McCann, with a Jordan Eberle. Those aren't line mates you're going to give a guy who you plan to send down, I think. And, again, it's still after the 9 games, we'll see how it goes. But it seems like the plan is to keep him up, and just something would have to happen to deviate from that plan.
Yeah, I agree. I had made the comment on Twitter that right now he's playing a lot more like a young Jordan Staal than Kopitar or Taves, right? Kind of two guys we've talked about when it comes to two-way centermen and stuff. And I say that for a couple reasons. One, and I'm stating that this again here, this is not having to do with future potential. This is strictly to do with an 18-year-old that the team seems committed to keeping around, as we just talked about, and given a serious shot at playing the entire season. And that's where Shane Wright is. So I made that comment because seeing him, the offensive part of his game, like we talked about, it's solid. I like kind of him on the power play. He's generating chances there. He's you posted a very good video from the first Vancouver game about him entering the zone and kind of button hooking and creating space for himself so he can see the ice and try to make a pass play there, right? He is doing these things offensively. Gotta elevate the puck, dude. Gotta elevate the puck. Okay, there were certainly times in that last Vancouver game, really throughout that game, Thatcher Demko was giving the Kraken up high, and it took the Kraken a while to kind of catch on to that and start shooting high. But there was certainly times where I felt like if he could, and I don't know. This is one thing where I've had questions with his shot mechanics. We talked about this last week with that kind of unique release he has. How much elevation can he get on that? Really, like thinking back to his OHL days, I'm trying to think, how often did he go top corner? And I don't know that I can really think of too many times where it was just like some snipe, top shelf kind of thing. It was a lot of going under goalies' arms and stuff. And so I think that might be, something he's going to have to work on over the course of the season. I think there's bigger things to worry about over the course of your first NHL season. But I think that's kind of where he's at. And some people freaked out a little bit when I made the Jordan Staal comparison, because I think everybody's looking at where Jordan Stahl's at now and thinking like, oh, is that where we want this, like, a high-class kid? And for one, I will say Jordan Stahl's played over 1,000 games and been very productive in the NHL. If that is what Shane Wright turns into, there is literally nothing wrong with that. That is a fantastic NHL career and a very productive one for his team. But looking back at Jordan Stahl's rookie season when he was 18, he scored 42 points. I think that's probably realistically what we're looking at with Shane Wright anyway, a point every other game, right? Like, I think that's realistic as for production for an 18-year-old coming in, particularly an 18-year-old who is more focused on the defensive side of the game, more focused on learning how to be a two-way centerman, being on the third line as we're projecting him to be, right? And that's going to be more of his role to begin with just a little bit of power play time. Jordan Staal did have 29 goals. Probably not going to happen for Shane Wright. That is still, we're talking season one, the second season after the lockout there for Jordan Staal. The world was very different. Got Jonathan Chichu scored, 56 and then 37 that year. So very different NHL than what we're looking at now. But I really like what I'm seeing from Wright. I really think he looks solid, and I'm really looking forward to him playing this full season and just getting used to the NHL, learning all of those things, because I think that's going to be very, very good for him, building that solid foundation of NHL lifestyle, getting used to the physicality of it, getting used to the grind of the full 82. I think that's going to do wonders for him in a way that I don't know it would have done the same thing for Matty as an 18-year-old. I think Shane Wright's better set up for that, just given his style of play and where he's at right now. I just, don't expect 1 million points. That's not who he is right now, and that's okay. We want him to learn these solid fundamentals, because those are the things that are going to pay off in huge ways, 2-3 years down the road when we're trying to make serious, deep playoff runs. The lessons he learns here are going to be those things that pay off for the Kraken there.
Yeah, and this is a good spot, I think, potentially to learn those. You look at, if you were to send him back to the OHL, being one of the best, maybe the best player there, it's harder to learn those fundamental skills in a way that really challenges you and helps build you up. And that's one thing I've noticed really since dev camp with Shane Wright, is that the better the competition, the better he looks. I think he's someone who kind of thrives on those challenges, and that's another reason to keep him up in the NHL and a reason to put him in those spots, not just with good players, but against good players. And we've seen that throughout the preseason too. He looked all right in that first game against the Flames, and then, in that second game against the Canucks, you put him against some, higher tier NHL talent. I thought he looked better. And it's kind of odd to think that necessarily. I don't think that's how it would work with a lot of players, but it's what we've seen since Shane Wright got to Seattle.
Yeah, these guys with their elite work ethic and stuff, the stories we've heard about Shane Wright going back to, pre-exceptional status and all of that stuff, right? He is just one of those guys who always wants to be in those situations, and finding himself in those situations here, he is, he's looking good, and that's all we want. Again, this isn't supposed to be our Stanley Cup window year and all of that kind of stuff anyway, so I don't think we need to worry about, like I said, point production, all that stuff. It's just, let's get him in, get him comfortable in the NHL, learning lessons, and it's going to be a fun ride for us all to experience together, and certainly for him.
Absolutely. I mean, that was one takeaway too I wanted to mention after that, first preseason game or whatever. He was so excited, that Calgary game, in the locker room afterwards. He's just like, this is the dream I've been working my whole life towards, and I'm living it right now. And you could see that on his face. Hard not to be happy for him.
Exactly. No, I'm super thrilled for him. Really, really excited about things. Just to get it out of the way, we talked about Matty Beniers already. Again, just like with your training camp report, dude is just the best player on the team. Sorry. That's just the way it is. If you think it's someone else, sorry, you're wrong. It is Matty
Exactly.
Beniers. It is Matty Beniers. This Calder campaign he is going to have is going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be our first national trophy race. RJ.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, the Kraken were certainly not in contention for any of the big awards last season, but Matty Beniers has to be one of the favorites, if not the favorite, for the Calder Trophy this year. I don't think that everyone around the league realizes just how good he is and how much better he's gotten over the
Yes.
offseason, because it is noticeable. And yes, he was good in that 10-game stretch last year, but he has gotten much better.
Yeah, my favorite part through training camp and preseason is all these people tweeting about how like special he looks and all this stuff, and I was just like, I said it his the first time I saw him was his first pregame skate or whatever, morning skate in at Climate Pledge. Remember, and I remember I think I tweeted out at that time, I was like, wow, this kid's special. Like he's gonna be their best player, and it's gonna be like soon, like really soon, like last year kind of soon. And so I'm just liking that he's continued that trajectory, and we're all seeing it now. It's he's just so fantastic. Where do you want to go next? You want to talk about the other new arrivals first, and kind of how they're fitting in?
Sure, let's do that.
Okay, so Bjorkstrand is the one that's really stood out to me. Just in a lot of the ways that you and I predicted, right? He's versatile. He can kind of play in different spots, both on the power play and 5-on-5. He can play with different people, and you kind of get a consistent result out of him, which is just a really good driver of offense. The one criticism I guess I'd give him is, it's okay to shoot the puck. This is a pet peeve we all had as Kraken fans last season, right? There was just too much passing at times, not enough just taking a shot. I think Bjorkstrand's kind of falling into that category a little bit right now anyway. It is just preseason. But in every other way, Bjorkstrand, I mean, anyone they're playing him with, he just looks comfortable. He's finding open spots behind defenses in the offensive zone. I like his speed and energy entering the zone in the transition game. He's as advertised.
He has this way of elevating anyone he plays with too, and just seamlessly. It's almost like it doesn't matter what type of player you put him with. He's just that perfect fit on whatever line, and we've seen that on a few different lines. He's played with Matty Beniers. He's played with recently with Alex Wenberg and Yanni Gord, and he's done a lot to make that line work. It's been tough for me kind of figuring out where the best fit for him is, because I look at him one place, I'm like, okay, yeah, he's got real chemistry, with Beniers and all this, and then he's with Wenberg. Oh, he's got real chemistry with them. I think it's just him. I think it's just Oliver Bjorkstrand. Like you said, as advertised. I think he's going to be a great piece that Dave Haxtell can fit really wherever he needs to. And yeah, I kind of just want to echo what you've said. Really, you phrased it well. His speed entering the zone, his playmaking ability. He made a great pass to Alex Wenberg in the last game to find him right in the slot. He even got Alex Wenberg to shoot the puck. I mean, what more can you want out of a guy?
Talk about magic.
I know. So yeah, he's just brought everything I could have hoped for so far, and excited to see him let loose in the regular season.
Yeah, and especially on the power play, because the power play looks so much better, that first unit, and having him out there and being a part of it is I think part of the reason why, and
they struggled to find someone in the bumper spot last year too, and Bjorkstrand is just built for that bumper spot. Dave Haxtell talked about it, how great it is to have someone who's not just a distributor from that spot, but a legitimate shooting and scoring threat as well. It's a whole other dimension that teams have to take into account. I'd like to see them work more plays to him. I haven't seen a lot of him being utilized there, but I know that he can be a good shooting threat from that spot. I've seen him kind of working individually with coaches as far as getting quick shots off in tight space from that slot spot, and that tells me that's power play work. But I'd like to see a little bit more as far as plays designed to go to him there, and that's something that a wrinkle you can put in once the season's going, you have a little bit more time to practice. But yeah, no, I've liked what I've seen.
Yeah, and I talked about it a little bit last week. I think it was last week where I talked about Connor Bedard on the Canada power play at the World Juniors and playing higher up in the slot, so that you're kind of only dealing with the forwards and then being able to get shots off from there. And one thing I did notice about Bjorkstrand is he does like to kind of sit a little higher in the slot when he's in that bumper role. And so I still think that that is something that they could look at with him as far as getting him to generate chances, and then also stretching out the defense, not letting them, the penalty kill, not letting them kind of collapse in the middle and clog up that passing lane between, a Burakovsky and a Beniers, all that kind of stuff.
And I should mention, that's one thing I like with Bjorkstrand on the power play too. I don't like they haven't gone to him a lot as far as a shooting threat, but they've given him a lot of freedom of movement.
Yes.
Not just for moving up higher into the zone to try and get himself open, but also puck support.
Yep.
Anywhere you need puck support, he's the guy to go in along the boards, anywhere you need it. So I like that he's kind of that utility player as well.
Yeah, no, loving everything we're seeing from Oliver Bjorkstrand. Super, super pumped to have him here. Again, got him for a steal too. Just got to mention that.
I know.
Ronnie Francis getting it done.
Can you believe that?
God, it's going to be incredible this season. All right, let's talk about their other major, new addition, right? Andre Burakovsky. Not quite as like instant success or instant plug and play in the lineup as Bjorkstrand has been. That being said, I feel like as the preseason gone on, he's looked so much more comfortable. Just the more game action he's getting, and as they're moving him around, kind of figuring out who he's comfortable with.
I think the comfort level has increased, although I will say in general, he's just kind of blended into the background for me. One of the things with Burakovsky is that, I mean, that's the book on him, right? That sometimes he'll just go invisible. Other times he will just wow you with incredible feats of skill. And I really haven't been wowed yet. But again, that's kind of what we know about him, right? He'll have these stretches, and I think he'll do something that will amaze us at some point, and he'll do another thing that will amaze us, and another thing, and another thing, and it'll kind of build. But he just hasn't really gotten the momentum going yet. They've shuffled him around on different lines. They started him on kind of what we viewed as like a third or a fourth line even to start training camp, and we talked about that last week. And then they've since moved him up with some of the better players. He's been playing with Matty Beniers recently, but I just haven't seen him really add to a line yet. He hasn't looked out of place. He hasn't taken away from anything, but he just hasn't set himself apart anyway for me. So I'm still waiting to see something from him. I'm confident he can do it. I mean, we've seen him do it, on multiple different teams, years, destinations in the past. But yeah, I think he just still needs to settle in a little bit more, or something just needs to click for him.
Yeah, and that's why I thought, his comfort level's gone up, and it's meant that I've noticed him more. The one time I've always noticed him is on the power play through these preseason games. He's very noticeable on the power play. I like what he's doing over there on the left side. I think the team could involve him a little more. Like, I would like to see that a little bit. I'd like to see them allow him to maybe work towards the middle a little bit more when he has the puck too. It looks like he feels like he's kind of stuck over there on that left side. Like, he'll start to take some steps and then he kind of stops himself. I'd like to see him just kind of given free rein to do what he wants to do, because I do think that he's a good distributor, as we've talked about. And I want him to have, full access to just read a defense and do what he wants to do with that information. I think that's how top tier players should play. 5-on-5, certainly the first time, that first preseason game, completely invisible, wasn't really there. Since then, as the comfort level's grown, noticed him a little bit more in transition. I think overall, the Kraken's transition, still, I'm not a huge fan of it, particularly on the power play, trying to get back into the offensive zone on the power play. Like, you don't need all four guys to just line up at that blue line and wait for the defenseman or whoever's going to be the puck carrier to come all the way from your own zone. Like, all you're doing is you're adding, bodies. You're stacking 8 bodies on that blue line that this guy's got to break through. Well, what are we doing? You know what I mean? I don't like that. I think they should start at their own blue line, work with speed with that person. They can then pass to one side or the other, and everybody can enter the zone with speed. I think that would be a lot more effective, but that's a different conversation. But thank you for letting me have it just now. But with Burakovsky, I'm noticing him a little bit more in the defensive zone. He's not going to be like a defensive stalwart kind of guy. That's not who he is, especially as a winger. But I'm noticing him a little bit more in that transition game, coming up with guys. I think he's getting a feel for how everybody else plays. And I think that's all he's trying to do, is just figure out how do these guys think, and then I'll settle into a way that complements them. And, you can argue, I'm sure some people are, about whether or not that's what you want your, high class free agent, big signing. You want him to be like that versus being like, no, I'm the guy and this is how I'm going to play. And then they're going to, play with me. But the bottom line is, on a team like the Kraken that are set up the way they are, where you have a top 9 that are all fairly interchangeable up and down the lineup, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world. And I certainly think for someone coming into it, stepping into it the way Burakovsky has, I understand that thought process of, let me just kind of figure out what's going on here, because it's not like playing in a Colorado where it's like, okay, if I'm on the first line, this is definitively what I'm doing. And if I'm on the second line, this is definitively what I'm doing based on who I'm playing with.
And yeah, I guess it takes some adjustment as far as expectations on my end, because I got to look in the mirror here too, because I heard from him basically how he wants to kind of step up and have this bigger role this season. It's something I think we all thought of with that free agent signing is, look, he didn't have a ton of opportunity in Colorado. He was playing third line minutes, but now he steps into a bigger role. He's ready to kind of take over. And I think you can maybe get a little too eager for him to really look like he's taking over there. But you're right. It's not the worst thing for him to kind of be cautious, try and get comfortable with the other players and everything. And, I just hope that he does kind of grow into taking over at some point, because I do think that's what the Kraken expect from him, and what he expects from himself ultimately at the end of the day. It's still early, and I am glad to hear from you that you're liking little bits of what you're seeing, that you're seeing progression, that you're seeing improvement, because I know you have a more perceptive eye for these things than I do. So that's at least good to hear.
Yeah, no, and like I said, I mean, this is something we talked about last year. There was tons of Wenberg, right? Wenberg never totally looked comfortable last year because the lines were just ever in flux, right? Like they were constantly shifting. And I think that, this year things are going to be a little more solidified, right? You can kind of slot in Matty first line all season long. You can kind of slide in Shane Wright third line basically all season long. That stability is going to help a lot, and I think he's just a guy who wants that stability. He wants to know where he stands with his line mates and what line he's on, so he knows what type of game to play, right? Because he is a versatile guy, kind of like Bjorkstrand. It's just, this is the other side of that coin of, some guys, they're either going to go out there and they're just going to do what they do and try and adjust on the fly, and there are other guys who want to prepare for that, right? And we're seeing Bjorkstrand Burakovsky's one of those guys who wants to prepare for the role he's given, and as long as he's jumping from the fourth line to the first line and everywhere in between, I don't think we're going to see him totally settle into something. And so that is something I would like to see through these last 2 preseason games and the rest of camp, is just get him paired up. We talked last week about the pairs. Get him paired up with somebody and just kind of figure out if you're going to have him settle in on that first or second line, and then let him get to work with that information. If we don't really see the progression past that, 10, 15, 20 games into the season, then we can start talking about it again. But I think that's really what he's looking for as far as on the ice, and it makes sense to me anyway.
So that's something important to look for in the next couple preseason games. See who he's with, how he's developing, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then last kind of new addition that I think we should talk about, because I don't know that we totally need to talk about Martin Jones all that much, would be Justin Schultz on the back end. He's looked really good as advertised. I kind of want to give him the keys to the first unit power play.
I do too, and it seems like the coaching staff does as well, because that's where they started him at training camp, and they haven't moved him off of it yet. I think he's kind of earned that spot, and it's tough because the first unit power play, they haven't scored yet. I mean, that's something worth talking about. They haven't scored yet, and you've seen some struggles there, but I don't think any of that has really been on Justin Schultz. I think he's been playing his role as the quarterback well. I would chalk it up more to just chemistry building, and then the lack of time to really institute a lot of different plays, a lot of different wrinkles in the power play. And Dave Haxtell talked about this too after the last preseason game, because we asked him about the power play again, given that top unit still hasn't scored, and he's I think he was realistic about it. He said, look, you look at some of the top power play units in the league, they haven't just been together for chunks of a season. They've been together 4-5 years. And you can really build a lot when you have that kind of time together. And it's just a luxury the Kraken don't really have by virtue of only existing for one full season. You can't really do that. So I think it's one of those things that just takes a lot of time. And at least now they have the skill there. And I think Justin Schultz is able to distribute the puck well. He's able to work with that skill. I just chalk it more up to, to chemistry and scheme.
Yeah, I agree. I've just felt like, he is similar to Dunn, right, in the way that they quarterback the power play, but I think he does some of the little things a little better than Dunn, and I think that it's going to be very valuable for Vince Dunn to have somebody like him around to teach him these things. And some of those things are creeping in, like when you don't have the puck, creeping in, shortening that zone, getting more into the high slot than being way back at the blue line. It makes, it puts a lot more pressure on the PK. They feel like you're more of a threat there. You're not just kind of hanging back where they know, okay, if it gets back to him, it's either going to be a long shot my goalie can see, or he's going to then just pass it off to somebody else. We don't totally have to worry about him. When you start creeping into the slot, they have to worry about you because now you're a one-timer threat, right? Like there's stuff they have to consider with you coming down there. So there's that. There's also the aspect of just shortening the zone in that way. He gets the puck and he dishes it to the side very quickly. He doesn't take a look. He makes sure when he doesn't have the puck, that's when he's doing all of his looking around. So that the moment he has the puck, he is either going to send it because he knows he's got the shooting lane open, or he is making a pass that he knows exactly where he's going to pass it to. So I think those two things are kind of what's been missing for Vince Dunn on the power play. On the other end is he holds onto the puck a little bit too long, and then it's harder to set up a one-timer to either side once you've kind of centralized the puck there in the middle. And I don't think Vince Dunn does a good enough job of making himself feel like a threat to opposing PKs. Schultz is doing those two things. I really think that's going to be valuable for Vince Dunn to learn over the course of this season. And then, moving forward long term, obviously Vince Dunn is more so going to be the guy for the Kraken. And I think this season is going to do a lot to kind of get him ready for those opportunities again on a first unit. But for now, I want to see it be Schultz. Yeah, so those are really the new guys. I think we could probably transition now into, the cuts, right? Like, first off, is there anybody else you want to talk about? We should probably talk about Yanni Gord a little bit, moving to wing.
Right, because he's kind of transitioned there the last couple games. I mean, it's something we've seen him do in the past. It's not huge news there, but I think it does open up some possibilities on whatever line he's on. We've talked about how many centers the Kraken have. That if Shane Wright was going to stick, somebody was going to have to move to wing. And we talked a little bit about that line with Bjorkstrand, Wenberg, and Gord on it. And I like the dynamic there with Gord moving to wing because yes, he's a great center. Yes, he can play great defensively. Excuse me, but he can also create chaos as a winger. I mean, with his forechecking ability, we all know what Yanni Gord is capable of. And if you have a guy like Alex Wenberg able to sit back, kind of be the more conservative one, jump in when when opportunity strikes, but can be the one to be a little bit more reserved, you can just unleash Yanni Gord on the other team's defenseman as a forechecker. And then of course Oliver Bjorkstrand fits in anywhere. I think moving Yanni to wing, good decision given how the rest of the lineup is shaking out. And I mean, he's just looked fantastic. Someone that, he's in mid-season form already. I just think you can't turn it off with him. Right. We saw even on, day one, actually, no, it was during rookie camp, one of those informal scrimmages, before training camp even started, he's already going 110% back checking. I just think he has one level and you just can't deviate from that. He's not capable of doing anything less.
Right. And for me, having him on the wing, the biggest thing is that he can utilize his speed now. You can get him in breakaway opportunities and stuff, right? Like when was some of his most exciting, times last year was all those like breakaways on the PK, right? When he's kind of freed up, when he doesn't have to play low in the defensive zone as the center and take on those responsibilities, you can utilize his speed and his ability to, be a very big offensive threat. Coming with speed, either whether it be in transition or just breaking out of your own zone on a breakaway or something like that, and pushing the defense back on their heels in a big way. And so that's what I've been most excited about with him being on the wing. Obviously, like you said, the forechecking is a huge part of it too. But I'm really liking this experiment so far. I think it's something that should hang around into the regular season.
And last season too, we were thinking about Yanni Gord maybe taking a step forward as far as scoring ability, scoring numbers, being that, true top 6 scorer. But the talent just wasn't around him on that team. They needed him to do too many other things. He had to focus and be a center, or else they were just going to, hemorrhaage goals against and chances against. Now maybe there's enough talent that he can really focus on that.
Yeah, exactly. Talking about more talent, I think, we should briefly mention Brandon Tanev is back. I've felt like he's looked like Brandon Tanev. I think the only sad thing is because of the addition of the talent around, he's going to be relegated to a bottom 6 role more definitively this year rather than last. It just means we're going to see him less in games, but that's just because, especially on the wings, the Kraken really beefed up there. But Brandon Tanev looks great.
Yeah, Turbo's back. He's himself. Yeah, was there ever any doubt?
No, not really. All right, so anybody else you want to mention real quick, or should we start looking at final cuts?
Just a quick shout out to the goalies, because as we mentioned before, they've done great. Both Philip Grubauer and Martin Jones have been perfect this preseason, which, given how much of a struggle the goaltending was last year, that's big positive news for the Kraken.
Yeah, no, Grubauer is, like I said, he looks sharp. That positioning's back, all that. He looks good. There's just no way.
Another quick shout out, Steve Briere, the new goalie coach.
Yep.
The goalies love him. They absolutely love him. They speak so glowingly of him every time he's brought up. He's really turned things around, I think.
I think that's something we're going to have to remember to shout out several times throughout the course of this season as things go differently from last year. I think that's going to be a big part of it. He has done good work so far as these preseason games have gone. But yes, just the overall feel of all the goaltenders and their energy and everything, which is very important to that position. Definitely different from last season. Okay, so as things stand right now, the Kraken have just final cuts left to make, and they got to cut 6 players off of this roster. You tweeted out kind of where things stand yesterday on the Emerald City Hockey Twitter account at Emerald City HKY. So I'm looking at that here. So we gotta trim 6 names from this list. RJ, do you get a sense, or are there any like kind of automatics off of this that you think we probably both agree on?
Right. So I mean, looking at this roster, they have 29 players left.
Yeah.
Roster size is 23. That means 6 more cuts need to be made. I think it's also worth mentioning, the guys that were cut. 6 players sent back to junior, 10 players put on waivers yesterday, and so we won't know their fate until about an hour and a half from now. So sorry everyone, but on the Twitter it's there. So yeah, if you look at the tweet I put out yesterday, I kind of diagrammed what I see the roster looking like at the moment. And as far as roster bubble guys, I'd say, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'd say 9 roster bubble guys.
I agree with that.
And I'd say that's Donato, Geeky, True, Sprong, Hayden, Evans, Kempney, Fleury, and then to Gord.
Yep.
Would be my roster bubble guys. And so you need to cut 6 of those. I think Alex True is probably the first name that comes to mind for me.
Yes, that's what I was thinking as well.
You'd agree on that one. I've seen a lot of his games and everything just from the last year in the Kraken organization, then from a couple years before that in the Sharks organization. Still doesn't use his size in a way that I'd like him to. He still tries to play a skill game, which this may kind of sound harsh, but it works in the AHL, but I just don't think he's skilled enough to have that work at this level. I was a little surprised to see Cole Lind waived instead of him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so True would be the first cut for me. Who's your next name?
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Let's go ahead and start from the back end out, because I think that's a little clearer, and then that way we also know like how many, right? So I think
good idea.
I think Joey is odd man out when it comes to the goaltenders. I just think that's just the reality of the situation. As much as I love seeing him dish the puck like he did to Donato in that first preseason game, I just think Joey's the odd man out. And you and I are talking about it. I think it's kind of 50-50 on whether or not someone's would claim him. To be honest, I think his struggles last year, some issues this year. I don't know that teams are going to be chomping at the bit to grab him. He's another year older, right? They start looking at that age and going like, oh, is he ever going to figure it out, right? That idea starts creeping in. So I don't know that Joey is a for sure we're losing him if we waive him, but I do think he's odd man out from this group. I think you agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the tough reality too with what's going on around him. He's the only Kraken goalie who's allowed a goal in the preseason.
Yeah.
It's a pretty high bar to have to meet. I think more that just Martin Jones has earned that backup spot, rather than Decourt has lost it.
Yeah, exactly. On the back end, Cale Fleury, I haven't noticed him one bit. I think that's an easy one to say, gonna get sent down, gonna go to Coachella Valley. I think Kempney probably same boat, obviously injury and stuff there, right? But I don't think gonna make the roster. I don't know about you.
Really? Okay, so I'm going to disagree with you here.
Okay.
Well, Kempney's injury status also complicates
It does
this
complicate
because he
it
was
a lot.
out skating in a red jersey. Let's assume that he's healthy.
Yeah.
10 days from now, by the time the season starts. If that's the case, I think he's going to be the seventh defenseman.
Okay.
Because in the time that he was healthy and especially in training camp, one, they've been playing him more in those spots, and two, I liked what I've seen from him more. Certainly more than a Cale Fleury. I think he's not ready yet. I think we can both agree on that. And then Riker Evans is the other name to mention. And while I do think that Riker Evans might be the better defenseman or the best defenseman of those three that we talked about, he is waivers exempt. They can send him down to Coachella Valley without having to put him through waivers and risk losing him. Kempney, you'd have to waive. And then also, I just think it's better for his development to get some games in at the AHL level instead of making the jump to the NHL level, especially if you're going to be the seventh defenseman.
Yeah.
Because that's the factor too, is this is not someone who's going to be playing right away, barring injury. He's going to be just sitting up there in the press box. And I think it's better to get him games with the Firebirds and have maybe Kempney sitting in the press box than having Evans up.
Yeah. Well, that I was going to say, because I don't know that like a Will Borgen is set. Because I was thinking Will Borgen can become seventh defenseman again, unfortunately, right? If you think Evans is ready to go. So that's kind of where I was coming from when I started all this. I think everything you mentioned is right on though, right? Evans being waivers exempt, huge deal. That flexibility, it makes more sense to send him down now and save that flexibility for later in the season. I think him being able to potentially have first pairing minutes in the AHL is far better for his development than being necessarily a third line guy or a third pairing guy for the Kraken. I don't know. He's just looked really good, and I would like to see him maybe rewarded for that. Certainly, depending on Kempney's injury status, if he's going to be injured and all that kind of stuff, and you need to keep another guy around, I think it would be nice to have Riker Evans around and maybe get some NHL game time, action while that's going on. And then when Kempney, isn't injured anymore, you can just waive Evans and not have to worry about anything. That's probably what they'll do. But I when it comes to Borgen, I was looking for that step forward from Borgen, and he just looks like Borgen to me. And so I don't know, bring in the more dynamic
that's
guy.
interesting, because I do disagree with you on that.
This is where I'm working off of 2 and a little bit of a third preseason game viewing. You've got all training camp, so yes, please feel free to tell me I'm wrong on this.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see also as the preseason goes on, as you're able to watch more games too, because that's right. It's not really fair at this point, because I have seen a lot more, especially through training camp, than you have, and I am basing this a lot too on what I've seen in training camp rather than the preseason games. But Will Borgen has been impressive to me. I think. Obviously, we know how strong he is on the puck, around the puck, how physical he is. I think he's actually gotten a little bit better in that regard too. But as far as the game type situations, those drills in training camp, I think he's moved the puck a little bit better out of his own zone. I think he's made more solid passes. I like the instincts and kind of keeping his head up a little bit more than last season. He hasn't made as many of those mistakes that turn into opposing goals. It helps when you have 3 shutouts at home, but I like what I've seen from him, and also in that spot too, because you're looking at a sixth defenseman that not only just has to be there, but fits in with the rest of your blue liners. And I think the Kraken have a good setup right now where You've got 3 lefties and 3 righties, and I know that's not the most important thing, but also paired with Carson Soucy, I think the chemistry is there with him. And we know this, they're friends. You know,
Yeah.
they're always in the warm-ups together stretching. I really do like the Soucy Borgen pair, not just from that chemistry perspective, but kind of how they round each other out and work well together. And I just think we've seen Soucy with Kempney. We've seen Soucy, I think, you know, they've rotated the D pairs a lot
Yeah.
over training camp. And when it comes to just a D partner for Soucy, I think Borgen has looked far and away the best.
All right. Well, there you go. You've convinced me then. So then yeah, I agree with you. Evans gets waived, Fleury gets waived, Kempney 7D.
Yeah, if he's healthy.
Yeah, no, that is an important thing. You know, as we talk about all this stuff, right? I haven't been able to see, and I don't think Borgen was in one of the 2 preseason games I could watch. So I think I've seen a very limited amount of
one
Borgen.
game worth of it.
Yeah, so definitely have to default to your opinion there. Okay, so that gives us what, 3, right? Joey, Evans, Fleury. So now got to make 3 more forward cuts. We've already talked about True. We're in agreement when it comes to him.
Yep.
So 2 cuts left to make between Donato, Hayden, Sprong,
And Geeky.
That's tough. That's really tough.
It is really tough.
You can make arguments for all of those guys.
Yep. It's really close. I think you can make a good argument for all of them. I mean, where do we start here?
Yeah, I think we start with Donato's going to make the team because of how his contract and everything went down. I think they're going to give him the opportunity to make the team. They're going to give him the opportunity to potentially play with Beniers, all of that stuff, if he can earn it as the regular season gets going. So I think Donato is there.
And as far as preseason performance, like, what more could you want?
Exactly. He's looked fantastic too. So I think Donato's safe. So then you're looking at Geeky, Sprong, Hayden. You got to lose 2 of those guys. Are any of them waivers exempt? Is Geeky waivers exempt? I don't think so.
All of them would have to go through waivers.
They all got to clear waivers.
Well, actually, it's worth mentioning too. Daniel Sprong doesn't have a contract.
Yeah, he doesn't have a contract.
He's still on a PTO. I know we're talking like we assume he's going to get a contract, and at this point, I kind of do. He's played well enough.
Yes,
I think he'd have to look really bad in these last 2 preseason games to not at least earn a 2-way deal or something. Yeah. But I think we kind of assume that a contract is coming, especially since they've kept him around this long.
Yeah, I think I don't know I think given the fact that Sprong's been around this long, I think they're probably leaning towards giving him a contract and keeping him around, in which case Geeky and Hayden are the odd man out. And I see that with Geeky. Again, I haven't, tell me if I'm wrong from training camp, but certainly in games, I haven't seen anything from Geeky that's been like, hey, he's really taken another step forward and he can hold down that 4th line job kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, because we had such high hopes for Geeky coming into last season, and I think we've established the ceiling is kind of a 4th liner defensive center. He has scored 1 goal in the preseason, but it was a nice dish from Tanev, kind of a open net one-timer type situation. I picked him as making these cuts if I were to do it myself as the guy to stay, just because the way things are set up right now with Yanni Gord at wing, you need a 4C, and Daniel Sprong and John Hayden certainly are not going to do that for you. And so that's why he sticks around. But yeah, I think he still certainly has something to prove there, a lot to prove there. So I would go with Sprong and Hayden as the cuts. And for Daniel Sprong, I think he's really impressed. He's done a good job. Just about everything you could ask from him. But at the end of the day, when you're someone who's brought in on a PTO, I think probably best case scenario is, you earn your contract and you go down to Coachella Valley to start, because if every forward is healthy, then what can you really do? And then, at the first injury, he's a really good call up to have someone who can bring a lot there. And then also in Coachella Valley, we'll talk about this a little later with their camp, but he'll be so excited. He'll be a fan favorite down there.
Yeah.
And then John Hayden had a great game, in the Vancouver game. I feel like he was someone who probably, he probably would have originally been one of these, 10 players placed on waivers yesterday, but he's done well. And we've seen these type of players too are really valued around the league. And that's where I'd worry about him on waivers. Guys like this, you'll see, maybe traded at the trade deadline or something, and they go for way more than you'd expect. Think of Nick Delorier last year. A guy who can, do the fighting, do some of that dirty work, right? And is not a liability when it comes to the actual playing hockey part of things. And Hayden certainly has held his own there. I mean, he's been a legit good fourth liner, and he's tough to play against too. I've heard from more than one Kraken player about how tough he is to play against in some of these drills and everything. So that the players respect him as well. He'd be a tough one to cut because I feel like he might not make it. But I think at the end of the day, he'd be the one to have to go.
I agree, and I'm like trying to do, I'm trying to do like roster gymnastics to find a way of keeping him, because I feel like that is something the Kraken don't totally have, is just this wrecking ball of a guy who's just gonna go in there and just run people over. You know what I mean? And you and I both know how valuable that can be. And I certainly think having, Tanev on one side of your fourth line and Hayden on the other is just this like horrible proposition for some other team to have to deal with, as, Matty Beniers is resting for his next shift. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of stuff you want, is it just kind of leads to this unrelenting, feeling. And I think that's very valuable. So I really, really want Hayden to make this team, but yeah, I think you're probably right. I just don't know that it's there.
When you talk about roster gymnastics, the one thing I think is worth mentioning is Jonas Donskoy is hurt. He's just day to day. We don't have an update on him beyond that. So at least temporarily, maybe you can keep one more of these guys. And between those two, I would go Hayden over Sprong, just based on how the team is built.
I agree. I don't think I'd keep Sprong. I think the team is going to maybe try to keep Sprong, but I wouldn't. We've been on record about this all last year, though. He scores. He can score. He's got a fabulous shot. He needs to do more everywhere else. Okay, so that's kind of where the roster's standing. So you talked about it a little bit there with Sprong, talking about Coachella Valley. They kicked off their training camp now that they can, have players. And
it's an important need for a training camp.
It is one of those things. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what's going on with the Firebirds right now up there?
Right. So kind of kicked off a couple days ago, where the Kraken made their first round of cuts. And I should clarify too, for, newer hockey fans, really anyone who's not familiar, intimately familiar with all the weird workings of contracts and how it all works. When we say cuts, what that means for most players is they're just simply sent down to the AHL, in this case, Coachella Valley. They do remain in the organization. For some of those guys that require waivers, they'll have an opportunity to be claimed by other teams. But if they're not, they just go down to the AHL. But they're not cut in the sense that you might be used to with, say, football, where just you're on the roster or whatever. Think of it as a large practice squad if you're a football fan.
Yeah, they're not out of a job. Like they still have a job. Yeah.
Yeah, and that contract still remains. So anyway, let's clarify that real quick. But yeah, the Kraken sent down a number of players to the Firebirds, a bunch of them yesterday. And the Firebirds have been hosting their training camp. They'll usually go on the ice after the Kraken. Some names that you'll recognize from Kraken training camp. Let's see, Callum Booth, Luke Henman, Ty Karche, Ville Petman, Petro Seppala, Jesper Froden, Cole Lynn being sent down. Hopefully he makes it. All these names, Magnus Hellberg. So they've been getting to work there. First of all, I got to say, the Firebirds practice jerseys look awesome. Yeah. We got our first look at that the other day. And so they've been preparing for the start of the AHL season. You've had the AHL coaching staff working with them, Dan Bilesma, Jess Campbell, and others on that staff. And I like how they've run things too. I've gotten a glimpse of a couple of days of Firebirds training camp, and it's a lot of the same of what we've seen from when that group ran some of the rookie camp days or the dev camp days. more of a focus on contact, more of a focus on game type situations. I got a great video clip. I need to tweet it. I think I forgot to yesterday, where it was Dan Bilesma working on a drill like board play and, how to get the puck off the boards. And he was just working over one of the players along the corner boards, showing the other guys how it's done. You could see the smiles on the other players' faces too, watching their coach just come in and, kind of slam a guy against the boards, try and get the puck out, all that sort of thing. So, I like the intensity that I've seen from their practices. More than you'll even see at the NHL level sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that coaching staff has been getting to work right away, prepping them for the AHL season.
Yeah, no, I'm really fired up for this team. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for us to have an AHL team of our own. Finally, we've arrived. That's one of those things when you can have the big brother, little brother rosters and stuff kind of together, and it's a nice feeling. And then feeling like they're at least going to be here on the West Coast. Certainly up there in Seattle, you're going to see these guys for a handful of games up there before they finally come down to Coachella Valley. I'm just really, really fired up for this team.
Yep, nice. No pun intended there. Pun intended.
Of course, pun intended. Come on.
Yeah.
Come on.
All right.
I didn't say they were an electric group.
Yeah, they're okay. Fair enough. And I do want to comment, maybe say one more thing about the roster itself and kind of the way the team's been constructed. I think they're going to be a really fun team to watch. You look at some of the offensive firepower that they're going to have. Andrew Podorowski is someone who stood out to me during Kraken camp, and he kind of knew he wasn't going to make the NHL roster, but put up over 100 points in the AHL last season. I mean, he just has that scoring touch. You look at a guy like Daniel Sprong, if he gets sent down. Jesper Froden, another guy with just a wicked shot who, maybe again, not going to make the NHL roster, but these guys can really score at the AHL level, and it's going to be a fun offensive team. I think the way that they're coaching too, the pace in some of these practices, they're going to come out and they're going to earn a lot of fans in Coachella Valley just by how they play, how exciting they are to watch. I think that's probably one of the goals too, as you're trying to build a brand new fan base, is playing that exciting brand of hockey, and you can see it really developing already.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be just a lot of fun, just seeing what I was able to see from everybody on Twitter and stuff posting from their practices. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. The coaching staff, like you said, it's a really good group, and I think it's a fun group, and I think they're going to be a group that's going to lean into that too, that style of play and everything. It's going to be a lot of fun. So really looking forward to the Firebirds getting going. We'll see. We just talked about the last bit that needs to get trimmed off the Kraken roster. We'll see who joins them. Should be a lot of fun. Before we get to the mascot really quick, RJ, I do think there's a news item worth mentioning from yesterday. Player we didn't really get to talk about because he's out with injury, Chris Drieger, did have a little bit of an announcement, and I think it's something cool. And so I want to kind of throw that in here instead of just, kind of tagging it on at the very, very end. So why don't you go ahead and fill everybody in on what Chris Drieger's been doing right now while he's been rehabbing his injury.
So we got to talk to Chris Drieger yesterday, and first of all, it was just great to see him again. We talked about how kind of lonely and isolating it can be when you have these long-term injuries. And Chris Drieger, I mean, he's not the type of guy who's just going to sulk about things and just kind of quietly sit there. He's putting that time off to real good use, and we got to talk to him yesterday about it. He started a brand new charitable organization called Drieger's Keepers. Great name, by the way, too. Love the kind of rhyming bit. And what it does is it provides loaner goalie equipment to young players, which is going to allow more kids to try, let's be honest, one of the most cost prohibitive positions in all of sports. I mean, goaltending, it's all the padding you need. It's very, very expensive. And hockey alone is a tough sport, to get into with all the costs associated with the gear and everything. We've seen a lot of barriers to entry on that. And then if your kid wants to be a goalie, I mean, bump that up even more so. It can be very expensive. And so Chris Drieger actually benefited from a similar program where they had loaner pads where he could try out the position, and his parents didn't have to, shell out all that money right away, not knowing what was going to become of it. And, look where he is now. He's a goaltender in the NHL. And, I think he just wants to help other kids kind of maybe have that same experience that he did and help them in their journey along the way. So he started Drieger's Keepers and talked about it with us. He's such a great interview, by the way, too. We asked him, well, what made you want to be a goalie? How did you kind of get into goaltending and take that path? And he said, well, I wasn't very good as a skater. In fact, I was pretty bad. My whole first season, I just scored only one goal. And so, when I got in net and I was able to, at least be, I think, somewhat productive and somewhat help the team, just kind of opened my eyes as far as what you can do. And it was funny too. We asked like, well, were your parents, did they have that kind of sticker shock when you decided, oh, you want to be a goalie? He's like, no, they actually, weren't fretting about it too much, because I think they saw that first season with me as a skater too. And they were glad that I could kind of do something, to be helpful to a team. And of course that's Driegs. That's his, he's so funny. And, he also talked about, maybe the appeals of playing goalie too, because we know that goalies, you have to have a certain kind of personality, right? And he said, first of all, it's a loaded question too, because goalies, have a bit of a reputation, for being a little out there. But he said the number one thing too is just that you can, you have so much control over a game. When you're on your game, you can basically single-handedly win a game for a team. It goes the other way where you can almost single-handedly lose your game for the team. But there's, a certain kind of personality that likes having that ability to go out there and just be really good. So he was there for a charity event, later in that day. He helped the kids put on the goalie pads and everything. He talked to a lot of the kids, really, kind of made their day. And it was just a cool event. And then also, I want to mention too, they're working with what's called, I think, quick change pads, which I think this is a really cool innovation. I had not heard about this before we got the press release for the charity event, but they're goalie pads that are designed to just go over your skater gear. What? And so it takes, I watched a video on this. It takes about a minute to get all the goalie gear on and change a young player into goalie pads. And so you can just have, through practice, any kid that wants to try goalie, it just takes a minute. They can throw the pads on and give the position a try. You and I growing up, like, that was unthinkable, right?
Totally. This is blowing my mind.
So leveraging that new innovation too to help more kids try the sport. I mean, the time is right.
Yeah, no, man, I love everything Drieger's doing with this. It's such a fantastic idea, and it's such a necessary thing. I really feel like, as far as getting more kids to try out goaltending. But yes, that is absolutely blowing my mind. This quick change gear, this new generation, RJ, I'm telling you, they got it too easy. We used to have to skate uphill both ways to get to the goalie gear, and then we'd have to spend like 45 minutes getting it on, and then you got like 5 minutes of practice left.
These kids will never know.
They just
never understand.
No, so that's all really, really, really good stuff from Drieger. Glad Drieger's still around. Got to see him. He seems in good spirits and everything too. That's really important during the rehab.
Yeah, and even talking about the injury too, they're like, well, how involved are you going to be in some of these clinics and everything? He's like, well, I don't know if you guys know, but I got a little time on my hands. Yeah. So I think I'm going to be pretty involved. So yeah, he is definitely looking on the bright side of everything.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Without further ado, though, I think we got to talk about this mascot reveal, because it did finally happen. Obviously, we've been talking about this for a very, very long time. You and I specifically, RJ, about what the Kraken mascot was going to be. Finally got the reveal. It is, and then this is the first controversy, RJ. Is it Buoy or is it Buoy? Because I think the technically correct pronunciation would be like boy, almost like Flavor Flav, right? Boy, hey boy, yeah boy. All right, so everybody make sure to do that with Buoy, but I think everybody's kind of going with Buoy, the kind of more colloquially used way of saying it, right? So it's gonna be Buoy. That's what we're gonna say, because that's what the team is really saying just about everywhere. So sorry for those of you that are sticklers for the pronunciation. We got to see Buoy the other night debut, based off the Fremont Troll. So they told us kind of, we got that word out that it was going to be kind of Fremont based, kind of led us to the idea of probably the Troll. Obviously we went through everything with the mascot contest you and I hosted with Zoidberg. and Grunge won based off the Fremont Troll. So very much we were prepared for something like this as an eventual outcome. But we get Buoy. So couple things of note. I do like the earring, the anchor earring. I like the kind of tentacle dread, and I really like the false tooth. I think that is a really, really solid design element that makes all the sense in the world for a hockey mascot. I'm kind of like, did nobody think of this before? Like, what's the deal with that? It seems so obvious.
It's brilliant. That's my favorite part about
Yeah.
Buoy, and it's just genius too. As soon as you see it, you're like, oh, how did no one else think of this? And just the ability to use it just as a prop anywhere, it gives a lot of possibilities.
Yeah. So Buoy the Troll, I think it's an overall solid design. I will say the thing I probably like the most is the logo, the like name logo, where it's got that like kind of little kid, almost finger paint kind of style writing.
But the signature?
Yes, and the B is like a hockey stick. I really like that.
Oh, that is great. As soon as I saw it yesterday on some of the merch and everything, I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. Great signature, easy to do, good for the kids.
Yep.
Yeah, you can tell a lot of effort went into that.
Yeah, I think that's really, really solid. Otherwise, I mean, it's a mascot. It's, I don't know. I was a little underwhelmed.
To be honest, so was I.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing. So look, I knew about, let's say 15 minutes before the reveal that it was going to be a troll.
Okay.
And I got really excited when I knew it was going to be a troll, because the winner of our contest was a troll. I think there's a lot of great possibilities with that. Of course, trolling, you can have a fun personality with that. And when he came, rappelling down from the rafters, I don't know, I kind of shook my head. I'm like, oh, okay. This is the execution on that. Like, maybe it'll grow on me, but I was a little underwhelmed, a little disappointed. Just something didn't quite look right or sit right. Maybe you can help me. Maybe we can talk this out and explain what it is exactly.
For me, it's how safe the design is. And I mean this from not like a, oh, this is what he looks like, but from like an actual costume design. I was really hoping for something kind of innovative and something like we haven't seen before. I think that's low-key one of the things that's worked really well for Gritty, is that Gritty is just a blob, right? He's an orange blob covered in fur, and what that allows them to do is, I think there's multiple Gritty suits, and they're all structurally different to allow Gritty to do different things and have different types of movement. And I think that's one of the things that low-key really works about Gritty that doesn't get talked about behind the personality and the crazy googly eyes and the streaking at Stadium Series games and all of that, right? Is the fact that Gritty as a design, by keeping it so basic as just orange fur blob, it allows you to do a lot of stuff behind that fur that allows Gritty to have different movements at different times, at different appearances, all of that stuff, and allows Gritty to really kind of do more than just someone in a felt suit, right? And I feel like that's where this mascot, I was maybe that's too much for me to have hoped for, but I was hoping for something that was going to have a little bit more possibility as far as what they're going to be able to do as a character. Right? Buoy is going to be able to just be a mascot character who can walk around, visit people in the stands, show up at kids' parties, that kind of stuff, but it's always going to be, bipedal and just kind of walking like a person in a suit. And I wanted something that felt a little bit different than that. And so I think that's really where I'm disappointed by things, is just, they're very tethered to the suit that they have. They're very tethered to that now because of this overall design and the limitations that suit then has. So that's where I was coming from, was I just wanted something new, fresh. Let's build some technology into it. Like, can we have glowing eyes or something? You know what I mean? Like LED strips in it somewhere, something like that. Like I really felt like, because they had so much time to put this together, I was hoping to see something that we could all point to, like we've been able to with so much of the Kraken fan experience, and be like, hey, we're the first, NHL stadium with a skylight, right? Basically, right? Where you could
Yeah.
just stand outside and look through a window and watch hockey. That's incredible. I was hoping that we were going to have something like that we could point to the mascot and be like, look, we're the first people to do this. Isn't that cool? We're taking mascots into the 21st century. And it didn't happen. And so that for me was the biggest disappointment.
I agree with everything you just said there. I think that there was that kind of helps me understand, a bit of my own disappointment. And I think it also kind of fits in with a larger theme of, I don't know, not really committing just a little bit, but not fully to everything. I think, you want to go different. You want to have a troll, which is definitely something different.
Yeah.
I think there was a quote in one of the articles about Buoy that there's only one other sports team in the country that has a troll as a mascot. Like that is very different.
Right.
But then you go kind of conventional as far as the costume and as far as like the personality too. And I get it. It's tough in the post gritty world.
It is.
To get a mascot personality just right. It's like you can't possibly be like edgier than gritty.
Nope.
But, if you're going with a troll, it can't just be like super nice and friendly all the time. You gotta troll people.
Right.
That's kind of part of what the mascot has to be. And I felt like they were just kind of in this middle ground where it didn't really work. Again, it's one game, but I felt like they were kind of trying to be everything and not. When you try and be everything to everyone, you're kind of just doomed to fail at that.
Yeah.
And I also think that they maybe thought the reaction might be a little better just kind of from the internet and from the public. And so, I think we have to talk about the online reaction.
Yes.
As much as we might want to avoid, I think we have to talk about it.
Right.
Because, I was tweeting about Buoy, got a lot of traction there. And I was, kind of scrolling through the 1,000 or so quote tweets and replies over the various Buoy tweets. I think it's fair to say that the reaction online was overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah,
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, probably. I think certainly you would
we
say
can argue
that
how much that matters
like
or doesn't
tepid.
matter.
Like people were not totally on board. I will say things have seemed to have changed as other fan bases have commented on Buoy in negative ways. It feels like a lot of Kraken fans have really kind of rallied around Buoy now, and it's like, hey, no, if anyone's gonna make fun of it, it's gonna be us. Like, you can't, make fun of this. Like, no, we gotta support our boy. And I do appreciate that about the Kraken community. But there was a lot of certainly writing it off of, oh, well, it's for the kids, so okay. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot of people who kind of felt that way. Gritty, one of the things, again, that works with Gritty is Gritty kind of plays to an older audience. It's the one mascot that's playing to adults. It's playing to people on social media. Gritty's not really playing to kids. You know what I mean?
No, he's not for the kids at all.
Gritty's getting lawsuits for being too rough with kids. Right? Like, that's the situation you've got going on there. So, I think people were maybe hoping for that. Adults were maybe hoping for that, for a mascot that was going to speak to them. And what the Kraken gave us was a mascot that is built for children. Again, more traditional mascot role, more traditional mascot. I think the word you were kind of looking for was safe, right? The design is safe. Everything about Buoy's personality is very safe. The whole thing that's the word that I keep coming back to when it comes to Buoy. So yeah, I think that was part of it, was people had expectation of kind of, at least calling Gritty, right? Like being the same as Gritty, but really what we got was just a traditional mascot, and that disappointed people.
No, I agree. And I will say, though, because, you talk about the kids angle, and I wasn't sure how, the kids would react, because it's certainly geared toward that, right? And of course, we had that funny quote from the, from the youth hockey player there, I do not like it, which that was just, that was hilarious. And I got some clarification too, from someone who knows the player. He was referring to, he did not like that Buoy was tapping him on the head like that. Yeah. So I know I wasn't referring to just Buoy, but in the context of it, of everything, it was just really funny. So, just nice, light, funny moment. But anyway, I will say, because Buoy was there the next day at practice. I believe that was yesterday, for like a whole, meet the mascot thing for fans. So many kids were there. I've never seen more kids turn out to a Kraken practice, and almost like just everybody, all the kids absolutely loved him.
Yeah.
The kids Like you could see the excitement on their faces. They were so happy. If I overheard things from a few of them, walking away, because I stay there for a long time after practice, and they were talking about how great Buoy was. So I will say the kids absolutely loved him. So, on that front, mission accomplished completely.
Yeah. No, and again, at the end of the day, that is who the mascot's there for. Right?
Yes.
Like it's there to welcome kids in, to be that extra little something, because at 4 years old, sports can be boring. Right? Like, but you know what? We want to take 4-year-old, you want to take your kid to a game. Right? And if the kid thinks it's boring, that's not like going to be the greatest experience for you, right? And the mascot's one of those things to help get kids in the building, make them feel like they had a good experience there so that they want to come back, right? Sports is an entertainment product. I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I will beat that drum till the day I die, and this is very much part of it. And it's something to speak to that next generation as like a point of entry to a franchise. And I think Buoy's going to do an excellent job at that. And so therefore Buoy is 100% a success. I just think when it came to those of us who, like you and I kind of have to be on it for this job, right, on social media, and really be plugged into the community. So we get kind of a different sense of things because, 6-year-olds aren't on social media. They really shouldn't be if they are. We're not able to hear those voices. You know what I mean? And so I think it can kind of sway what our perception of public opinion is. But I got to think everybody who's got a kid who's seen that mascot, they're really into it, and that's fun for them. And I think that's a really good thing.
At the end of the day, that is what it's all about.
Yeah. And then I think the last thing, though, that also kind of fed into it was the confusion around Buoy's gender, too, became like a big part of the discourse on social media, too.
And I was not expecting that. I don't think many of us were.
No. And this kind of goes back to me being disappointed with how safe Buoy overall was as far as the costume was. Like, I was kind of hoping we would have a female mascot. You know what I mean? Like, I think that would be something that was going to be really cool. Then you get all the PR releases from the team, and they're very careful not to gender Buoy. So now it's like, okay, Buoy exists, non-binary, exists outside of gender, whatever, however you want to call it, right? That's cool. I'm down with that. Like, let's go. I already call
it's a mascot,
right? Exactly. I already call all mascots it's anyway, right? So yeah. I'm down with that. But then you have the Seattle Times article come out. You have the Espen article from Ryan Clark as well. But you have Jeff Baker's Seattle Times article come out that really goes out of its way to clarify that Buoy is a he. And that caused a lot of stuff on social media. And what I'm going to say is I really think that this is, because after reading both articles, the Seattle Times article from Jeff Baker and the Ryan Clark article, Ryan Clark obviously having been with the Athletic last year with the Kraken, I really feel like those articles were written back in December when we almost got Buoy, and they talk about in both of those articles using pretty close to the same language, all of the things around almost having Buoy in December and then not having Buoy in December. I think those articles were literally written in December, put on the shelf until now. That's why Ryan Clark kind of had an exclusive, even though he's now a national reporter. I think it's because he already wrote that article a couple months ago. And I'm just going to say, this is my opinion. We haven't talked to either of them, don't know this as a fact, but I really think that's what it was. And I think that might have been more of what the Kraken were going for back in December. And then maybe things changed internally to kind of remove the pronouns and everything, right, to now. And that's where that kind of dissonance was, where you have really these two articles saying, definitively, no, he is the nephew of the Fremont Troll and all this stuff. Whereas the team is very much just like, yeah, we're not talking about it. And at least that's my best guess anyway, because there's a lot of time in between those two things. You're talking about like 10 months, so.
For sure, and they went into a lot of the lore, the backstory for Buoy and everything. Yeah. They had that whole thing built, and one of the elements that was clearly in Baker and Clark's pieces was that nephew of the Fremont Troll, and that answers that question. And it was included, I don't think, anywhere in the press release that we got on the day of. So it's just was it?
No, it was included for the first time in the email the Kraken sent out yesterday to fans. That's the first time that was confirmed.
Yeah, but we got a press release, maybe 5 or so minutes after the official unveiling, and everyone saw it. And it wasn't mentioned anywhere in there. So I think it's one of those things that was there originally, probably just got taken out. That would make sense. And so that leaves that to that confusion. The team has confirmed the whole nephew story anyway. But yeah, I do want to say that was a bit of disappointment for me. It's just that I kind of wanted a female mascot, and I really think it's a missed opportunity because with Buoy, with the whole execution, with everything, it's possible. There's nothing about Buoy that makes that impossible. I
Right.
think it'd be easy to make that work. It doesn't. Yeah, I just think it was right there, and so I'd call it a missed opportunity.
Again, it felt like the safe choice, and they just went with the safe choice. And yeah, and so that's what's there. So like I said, just had to talk about it because that turned into a lot of the discourse as far as maybe some of that negativity that people were feeling towards it too. As we're trying to kind of put all that into words, it was certainly a unique situation that you had, Jeff Baker defending his article, the people that turned into a whole thing too, stuff. So it was.
Let's not get into that.
Time. I know it was an interesting time. All right, so that's it for this nice long hour and a half episode of the deep dive.
Yeah, hey, isn't it great to have so much to talk about again, though?
Yes, it is. Super excited for the season. We'll have only one more deep dive before the regular season. Next deep dive will be the last deep dive before the regular season. We'll have those last 2 preseason games under our belt. We'll know what the finalized roster is, I think, at that point, right? Cuts will have to have happened.
I would think so.
By then, yeah. So that's going to be super exciting. Heck, the regular season will have started for the NHL by then too.
That's true.
gotta deal with that. But yes, just one last shout out, everybody. Check out the Patreon to see if it's something you want to do for this season. You can hop on at any point during the course of the season, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to be kicking that off this week. First episode of the Red Glare podcast, talking league wide stuff. Going to come out at the end of this week. So if you want to be around for that, make sure you take a look at that. And I think that's everything, RJ. We can just go ahead and say see y'all next time.